can, but it would be good to get a win from a Frenchman here. And yeah, let's jump into it here. For map number 1, we're going to be playing on Romanticide, starting in the top left-hand side of the map, playing as the Red Terran. It is Bratok.
And in the bottom right for Gamer's Origin, he is Stephano. And that is a very, very, very storied player right there. Stephano, not just one of the best non-Koreans during a time where the Koreans were dominating so hard, but also a guy who was actually able to push the envelope in a lot of matches. You know, his creativity definitely helped what seemed to be a very natural talent that he brought in. You know, there's always been those rumors that Stephano didn't really practice and then would win a tournament, right? Which I think have been kind of debunked by now. He actually does do a decent amount of practice, but this guy has just been able to go back to StarCraft at any point and just kind of get it, you know, just get right back into the swing of things. And while there was that one moment, you know, 2018-ish, that he just didn't have really good ZVZ, everything else was going really well for him. And eventually he fixed that too. So I was hoping to see him in a bit of a better circumstance coming into this group, but I think he's got a strong shot against Bratok.
He was ahead of the curve for a very long time. I think first because of his mechanics and the way he understood like how to produce units and group them. And then later on, what really impressed me from him, and I think what he was ahead of a lot of people, is the way he was engaging. He was always preemptively setting up fights to take the engagement perfectly, much better than anybody else would be able to. And it was just really impressive to see that unfold for as long as it did. Obviously not nearly as good. By the way, those stories, like you talk about some of them and how much he practiced, there's still a crazy story of how when he traveled to, I think it was WCS Europe, in Sweden, perhaps, his luggage was lost. So he had no team jersey. He was wearing like a random white t-shirt. He had no keyboard and mouse, just borrowed a random one, and then he won the tournament.
There's just guys out there, right, that are like, I mean, talent is kind of a word that I guess is, it can be controversial depending on your viewpoint of it. You know, people with talent don't want to have it all contribute to their talent, right? Like they'd obviously put a lot of hours in. But I don't know, when you hear stories like that, you gotta be like, yeah, that's just gonna require a certain special type of being to be able to do that. And Stephano is a super special type of being, isn't he? He's a very fun guy, very unique guy, and he's still freaking good at StarCraft. Almost getting the Reaper to start things off would have been nice, but Bratok keeping that alive, gonna get that second scout in, which is quite important for him, because he did go for a 3CC. He does not want to be cheesed out of this game.
Yeah, that was 2 hit points actually on that Reaper, barely getting out here, but keeping an eye on that third base timing very precisely. And yeah, Stephano, I'm curious whether he might play with a very Ling-heavy style, Ling Bane, that we've been seeing actually in some of the previous games that were on the stream here. Because once upon a time, that was like the one strategy at which he was really, really good at. I know how much he likes his links and just kind of droning up and, you know, getting Ling Bane to defend everything. Oh, the Reaper is actually going to go down. A little bit sloppy here from Bratok to let that happen.
Yeah, a little bit. The Hellenes are here, though, to do that follow-up scout, and that is still what's most important. You know, the Reaper can do another scout into the main if it can actually bypass these queens. It can help pop them out of place, of course, but I think most importantly, it's about the scouting. Bratok is actually going to go into a Banshee after this, which I'm a little surprised by. I feel like maybe Clem has just really like clouded everything about TVZ. I just think of Clem's TVZ, right? But I feel like when people go for a 3CC, especially if their scouting is apparently decent, can always be deceiving, but apparently decent, that they just kind of skyrocket up into that stim and barracks production. Taking a stopover on Banshees kind of turns this super macro opener into a little bit more reserved. You know, these Banshees might not actually get anything done, and sometimes their best use is defensive. But I guess maybe Bradok's hoping to actually find some drones here.
Stephano actually scouted with the Overlord. He saw a tech lab researching something. He didn't see what building was attached. And he probably thought, okay, well, nobody's getting, you know, concussive shells or stim pack this early usually. So he just flew out, most likely knowing that it's a cloaked Banshee. And he did save his Overlord thanks to that, because there was no Marine for the time being either. So should be getting ready perfectly for it.
Okay, so we got mech on the way. All right, that is a bit of a change up. Braddock is unfortunately going to lose these initial Hellions without getting anything done. But because he's going for mech, it's actually not really that important. Consistent Hellion production when you do this. If you're going to go over to Stim, you'd actually swap over the reactors and you know, get to your Marines. But with mech coming through here, double armory as well right off the bat. That is definitely going to be a change up. And Stephano has got to get information about this. He's not seen the gases, he's not seen the factories. He's going to see some follow-up Hellions, but that doesn't necessarily mean mech yet.
Yeah, those Banshees finally coming into play, but they're going for the Queens, not quite aiming to try and kill any drones just yet. He might just be trying to take out the 4th base attempt here, which Stephano, with the amount of Queens that he has, is going to be able to fight this. Doesn't quite have detection. Spore is coming in. Oh, the Banshees. Oh no, he's going to lose one of them, maybe both. This is terrible for Braddock. He invested so much into this. The unit Frostbab is looking terrible. Like 2 Banshees and 4 Hellions died, and he's only killed 8 Cryptumers and 3 Lings.
Well, Cryptumers do take energy. We don't usually, don't usually care about that. The Queens are right back on the Cryptumers, and they're still alive despite having used a lot of the transfuses to survive. You're right, that was just not what was supposed to happen. The 2 Banshees were at the very least going to help patrol against run-bys in the future. But it is what it is. Braddock's got to continue on, not worry about it, get into his Cyclone Hellion stage. At this point, Stephano should know that it's mech. He's seen the 3rd base, how many gases were put down. That's an awful lot of Hellions. No 2-1-1 drop has occurred. And so he might, you know, have finally shifted his mentality a little bit. We do have a Hydralisk on the way, as well as an Infestation Pit. His lair might have been a little bit later. It's one of the reasons he didn't have an Overseer with his Queens. But his Hive could be extremely fast.
Yeah, Stephano is one of those guys that has plenty of experience with just kind of like splitting the map, playing the longer game. Like for a long time, he was doing that. During the Swamos era, he was one of the better players at executing this kind of style. So he's got a wealth of experience against mech as well. I wonder what the reasoning is with Braddock. Maybe he was just having a hard time with bio and then opted to try and play with a bit more mech. But Stephano definitely should know exactly how to play against this.
Yeah, of course. Just because it's not really in meta right now doesn't mean that Stephano has forgotten how to deal with it. And while this can be tricky, you know, the Hellions guarding the Cyclones and the Cyclones taking out a lot of these bigger units with their lock-on, kind of the idea is that you don't really have to engage until they really push on to creep. And then at that point, hopefully, you've gathered not just Lings, which are going to get barbecued, but also some more units, basically. Quantity being so important, but most important maybe in this situation. Now the Hellions get into a choke, so it still ends up being a surround, but that was the that was what I was talking about, just the amount of units that can come out there and take advantage of when the mech player over-invests, gets too deep on a creep, gets himself up in a choke. That can instantly take away all of their map pressure. And now Braddock coming in here with not more Hellions guarding his Cyclones, but actually a decent amount of Widow Mines.
Yeah, that was a jambon beurre sandwich, specialty of Stephano here, coming in from the other side. And it's interesting that it's been tankless up until now, and only now is he starting to go for tanks. Obviously, up until now, it was kind of like more like a battle mech style. But you do have to go for tanks here eventually in this type of game to be able to siege properly. Stephano's relentless with the creep spread, by the way. Like, it's been pushed back so many times by Braddock, but he keeps on advancing still.
That's one skill that just really doesn't ever get lost. You know, good creep spread is going to continue being important in StarCraft 2 for the rest of its life, pretty much. You know, it's only changed a little bit, but still very important to a Zerg player's overall skill. Stephano's got it. Now, he has had to cancel one of his hatcheries, but it was pretty darn new, and he still is on 5 bases. So I would say that overall, Braddock's pressure, not really anything to write home about. He lost the Banshees. He lost the initial group of units that could have been, you know, they could have actually been pulled back, spent more time kind of hovering around the creep tumors, exactly like this is doing, except then you'd have 2 armies instead of just the 1. But yeah, you got to turn into tanks at some point. And in this game, Braddock's not just going over into tanks. He's adding on some Ghost Academies. Got some spooky mech going on.
Yeah, perhaps some new attempts. Seen some not so successful ones so far. It's kind of crazy how all these clips came out all at once, like you have Terran nuking their own armies. I think I saw at least 2. It's like, well, what is going on with this here? But yeah, Braddock if he plays patiently here, if he's able to land, like when you go for nukes like this, you're hoping to land that one big one. That's all you need. You don't need to hit multiple really great ones. Like just one will be enough. But Stephano usually very good at spotting, you know, where that's happening and making sure he doesn't have one land on his entire army, obviously.
And, you know, you usually would say the same for Solar, for instance, but sometimes even the best players make mistakes, and that's kind of what the nukes are going to try to do. You know, obviously get that one big, gigantic hit, but then also force Stephano to make some mistakes, be checking around, and then take bad engagements. Right now, taking an all-right engagement, looking for Redux, does still get hit multiple times by the tanks, but I think right now I'm worried about Broduk's overall supply. After giving up his Cyclone and Hellions, his supply really dipped, and he was not quite yet on a solid tank count, had me a little bit worried. It looks like he is going to hold. Some EMPs will come out and take out the effectiveness of the Vipers, or at least hopefully they will. And without those Vipers, it should be difficult to push into a mech player on a planetary.
There's always the opportunity to go for some snipes and EMPs here as well, which can be important. I'm glad you're mentioning the supply as much as you are, by the way. Good to know that I'm not the only one looking at all that matters in this game.
It's all that matters. It's all that matters. In this case, it's finally evened up. So, you know, it's actually an even game according to that. Which, I mean, it kind of is. I would say that Broduk overall didn't really get to execute his perfect game plan, which would be to consistently pressure Stephano, really get him off his game, put him on his back foot, and then to expand out the wazoo, right? In this game, it was like, yeah, Stephano didn't really feel that much pressure, still got his bases up, still got to that very fast hive. It was 7-minute hive. And of course, maxed out himself with a bit of a bank. But this is something where Broduk, if he can really play late game, you know, turtle with some harassment here, then good on him, man. This is actually maybe a comfy spot for Broduk as he's finally getting max. He got some good upgrades, and he has almost every technology he would want. Maybe eventually add in some liberators, right? But it's a pretty good army. We'll see how it engages.
Whoa, Stephano is actually going from some giant abducts into his 12 lurkers. He caught all ghosts but 2. And gets a lot of snipes himself here.
Dang. That is a pretty powerful start to this engagement. Every single ghost going down. There is the last one falling, and still so many Vipers left over. A couple of them are falling thanks to this one missile turret, but even the tanks, they're pulled forward, getting blinding clouded, and that is going to be, I mean, a successful push-in for Stephano. He can't actually go any farther, as it is going to be difficult. It's going to be a process to actually break Broduk, but getting all of those ghosts, that is quite expensive.
I think Stephano knows exactly how to play against this. Step 1, you make 12 lurkers. Step 2, you just abduct everything into them and watch them kill everything pretty much instantly.
Make it sound so easy. Stephano makes it look so easy,
yeah.
But I guarantee if you tried that, you would have accidentally moved all your lurkers somewhere.
Well, one EMP would have drained all the energy from all the Vipers, most likely.
Exactly. But that was such a sharp, aggressive, confident attack that I guess Broduk, you know, was like, yeah, really going to do that, are you? And then, yep, there goes every single ghost. He's already replaced a lot of them, and he's still working on some good upgrades for his mech. But, I mean, while these engagements might not seem like they matter the most, because we're not getting, like, a base broken, every single engagement that goes slightly Stephano's way kind of ensures that Broduk can't continue to expand. And if Broduk can't continue to expand, well, we know how that's going to go. He's going to run out of money. Finally, the EMP goes down, but it kind of misses a lot of the Vipers. Still a lot of Viper energy left. There's a couple of blinding clouds, and maybe Stephano has actually found an opportunity to break Broduk, and much quicker than I anticipated. There you go, 60 supply difference heading up into that natural. Only a couple of tanks left over. This is already a terrible sign for Broduk. Even if he doesn't lose here, this supply is really telling the tale.
Oh, yes, it is. The blinding cloud was massive. He caught so many of the tanks. Stephano, I think he struck at the perfect time here before Broduk had replenished his supply count. He could try and swarm in behind this with his 30 links and 9 hydralisks in the production tab. Stephano is basically always maxed out from this point, so he might end up just attacking non-stop and not letting Broduk replenish that supply count and having enough to defend.
That would be the best thing to do here. He's already making his lurkers, which in the process of making lurkers, maybe Broduk does manage to just barely hit 150 supply. But compared to the type of army Stephano has gotten, 11 lurkers all finishing at once, with Vipers still alive, re-energized as well. yeah, 150 supply is not going to cut it. 190 supply didn't quite cut it. That's when he was broken. So I don't know how Braddock's going to hold against this one. Maybe use his planetary a bit more if he could. His tanks are really well spread out, and there are some missile turrets going up. So I got to say, for the supply, he set up the best situation possible, but Stephano is still going to look for a way to break him.
Yeah, almost double the army supply is going in hot here. Blinding clouds land on all of the tanks. Almost none of them are shooting it, except the one on the left-hand side here. Stephano pouncing on top of these tanks is going to clear those out all the way very, very quickly. He's still got a big bang behind this to spend more and more on units to reinforce into that location. Ghosts kind of left on their own, and it looks like Stephano was completely broken through. Braddock has to call GG.
Stephano just making that look super easy. I mean, he was always in control of that game, but I figured Braddock almost maxed out on 5 bases, has a decent shot to, you know, tire out the Zerg. You know, if they start making some silly mistakes and some silly engagements, and that can actually start to decrease their bank, put them in more of a financial burden. But that didn't happen. Stephano took engagements well, and then fantastic. He actually ended up breaking Braddock far sooner than I thought he was going to. And that is not a good sign for Braddock, who, I mean, both of these players really need this series win. And honestly, at this point, they both need to stop losing maps. So this is already a terrible sign for Braddock.
Yeah, we could tell how experienced Stephano is against this. It would be so easy to kind of be worried about the tanks and just the Terran just kind of turtling in this location and say, okay, I'm going to take it easy, keep expanding. But then if you let Braddock just max out and get all of his upgrades, his army gets so much scarier. That's when he starts producing nukes, which didn't even really come into play here because he was focused on maxing out first. And when he got close to that, he got attacked into. So then he had to remake units. So Stephano didn't give Braddock any opportunity to fully get online. Like, yes, Braddock went up to 4 bases, but past that, he was just getting swarmed the whole time.
And I really like that Stephano, his choice to actually go in where he did. Not on top of a planetary, which would have at least cost an extra blinding cloud, and for some of the initial engagements, that could have been a big deal. But also, if it didn't get blinding clouded, obviously a planetary is very hard to break. He chose a position that was, you know, probably the least guarded, even though there were still tanks and there were still ghosts, and there was even that missile turret that got a couple of Vipers. It was going to be the least protected area on Romana side. And sometimes, you know, that backfires. It's still a choke. The Terran players are usually able to get their center towers up and see that, okay, you are going to try and break that position, but the way that Stephano just like confidently pulled that trigger made Braddock's mech game look very feeble, very weak for a mech player, right? Mech's supposed to be all about tiring your opponent out, taking the better trades, and it wasn't that game, not for Braddock.
Yeah, I think momentum is also probably pretty important. Like, remember the first few units did absolutely nothing. He kept on losing, like that, started with that first Reaper, and then Hellions died. He lost the first 2 Banshees doing like basically nothing as well. Like Queens just got rid of that very easily. So probably looking to try and do better from the start here, ideally for him, if he wants to play even a similar style at all as we head into map number 2 here on 2K Atmospheres.
Yeah, one of the, I guess, quote-unquote, normal maps, something really super special about it. Just a nice map with a very nice aesthetic as well, I must say. So on the top right, now up 1, he is Gamer Origins Stephano.
His opponent in the bottom left, playing as the Terran in the reds, it is Braddock.
Definitely think you're spot on about the pointing out all the things that happened prior to the maxed out scenario. It really was just Stephano with the momentum, knowing exactly what to do. Even when his scouting might have been a little bit incomplete, he still got enough to really be able to determine what to do, how greedy he could be. So we got an update from the B stream, by the way. Geralt 2-0 versus Milky Cattle. Not necessarily surprising, and actually very important for Geralt to get that clean sweep. But man, Milky Cow, he's gotten into so many dream hacks, and he's not really done as well as I think he hopes he will, right? But I feel like I'm always cheering for him. He's gotten actually a couple of really great games. Those 2-0s that he has on his scores, or 0-2s, I guess, for him, they're not really indicative of his skill. I'm really hoping that next season it goes well for him.
Hopefully we'll see him back. You know, I used to feel like Braddock, he was like a kind of like a scary guy in that, like, there was this one photo of him circulating online where he just, you know, he looks like a guy you would not want to mess with. And that was That was a bit of a myth because like he went to a home story cup one day and he turned out to be like this giant sweetheart that just wanted to go for kebabs all the time. So yeah, turned out he's just a really nice guy.
You know, I can't think of a guy who is actually as scary as I guess they seem, you know, like, you know, like physically, visually. They all turn out to be like big sweethearts. Like, I'd say like Zake as well was kind of a guy that I wasn't really sure about. Just like, you know, he wasn't necessarily like super outgoing on the camera and he kind of looked a little bit intimidating. And then I met him my first home story cup back in like 2013 or whatever. And he was the one that taught me how to play King's Cup and the the epic Viking game. So, you know, it's now one of my favorite guys.
Yeah, Sokka is one of the biggest sweethearts. Like his voice kind of gives it away immediately too when you meet him. He's like just like very relaxed voice. Yeah, Brattok is actually, he saw that there was some links down on the map, so he stayed home with the Reaper here for a while, which Stephano reacted to by heading back home with the 6 links. Just kind of hanging around for now, maybe waiting for that Reaper out to be back there so he can catch it.
Yeah, maybe. Well, this puts Brattok in kind of an awkward position. Who, I mean, he's still going to go one of those Hellions, but basically... 2021 StarCraft 2, you don't really want to see a Terran build a bunker like this. I think it was a thing back in like, oh gosh, like literally 2010, before people could like control Hellions or really had great build orders. But yeah, this year, it might not seem like a lot. It's 100 minerals or 75 once it's salvaged, but it actually kind of gives an idea as to where the Terran's player, his head's at. And in this case, being defensive when Stephano's just, you know, is just a simple opener, kind of got the scared part in there and his macros behind it. It means Stephano still effectively got this like great opener, even though the Lings really didn't end up doing a whole lot.
It seems like an overreaction. Anytime I see something like this, I'm like, okay, something happened in their latter games for sure. You know, like Stephano just like link plotted him to start to build up some mind games, you know, going to the match. And it's just really cool to see. I mean, in this case, you know, I'm sure it's not cool for Brattok when he's going to realize he kind of made that for nothing and spent minerals in the wrong place. But for Stephano to get ahead like this on a small detail, it's a very momentum-based game. So anything that can go his way, he'll take. And that's well done by him.
I think you're right. Just like all it takes is playing one ladder game and you're just, you know, getting Ling rush and you're like, well, this is a silly way to lose. Let's go and invest here. Which again, it might not actually, you know, this game goes 20 minutes. We're not going to be talking about the first 5 minutes, are we? But I think it is still signifiers where Brattok's head's at. Now, he's also getting a fusion core. He's going for a battlecruiser build, which, you know, you might argue that this bunker is just that little extra bit to cover him because this is a vulnerable portion of a battlecruiser build. But yeah, again, you typically want to be more so saying, I have Hellions scouting, I know the timings really well, I know my opponent really well, I know that I'm okay to go to this battlecruiser without defending, so bunker's still a little bit odd. But now we got to talk about where Stephano's head is at. Is he thinking battlecruiser? He certainly hasn't gotten in to scout it.
Yeah, he hasn't been able to see really much of anything here. And we have Hellions being hidden behind the wall for Brattok. He's out on the map with only 3 Hellions right now. And he's getting a lot more back at home, sent the one that was like really low on hit points to be repaired as well. And when he finally moves out, he's just hoping to try and catch Stephano off guard, I think. He might even commit to killing drones.
This is kind of the tricky part about battlecruisers. The battlecruiser itself, very rarely, especially in the pro leagues, does a lot of damage, but the Hellions absolutely can. Now, starting things off by losing 2 Hellions and a Reaper is not usually what you would want, but there still is that chance that the battlecruiser distracts and the Hellions get a lot of damage done. Stephano has just Lings right now, and I don't know if they'll actually be able to surround this many Hellions. The Queens are in position for the Hellions, but not the battlecruiser, as it may take down a Sport Brawl if he's not careful. The Hellbats are here, the Queens have spread out, the Lings come in to do what they possibly can, which is really not a whole lot. But as Hellbats, I don't think they're ever going to really reach that drone line, which I think was actually the better call. Was just to try and sack them, get as many drones as possible, and then let the battlecruiser live. But 3 drones dead, mostly thanks to the battlecruiser. It's not the opening that Brattok was hoping for.
Yeah, it feels like he would have loved to be able to do more. He did get 2 Queens, I think it was. But yeah, those Hellbats died. They probably shouted in distance, "Go, battlecruiser! It's gonna be you doing all the work here." But yeah, 5 drones, or quite a few. 8 Hellbats have died here. So not nearly enough damage for Brattok. considering the amount of units he sacrificed. Like, Stephano is just happy to be droning up immediately behind this. And he's going to aspire here while getting Glare Reconstitution.
It's going to be well set up to deal with the battlecruiser, potential battlecruiser mech that we're going to, that he's probably going to be seeing. We know that is the case. Yamato's on the way. Factories are on the way. Stephano actually hasn't got a 100% scout on it, but he's just predicting very accurately that is what's going to be coming out here. When we see the Yamato, we should be seeing more battlecruisers. The problem is, of course, that battlecruisers being very expensive. Usually you have to really commit to battlecruisers, then kind of into the mech, as we see here. So it's great that he's going to have usually up to 3 battlecruisers, is what we see, and then they move on to mech. But it's so much better to see Stephano reacting as fast as he is. Upgrade's already done, Corruptor's already on the way, and a Roach max out could definitely happen.
Yeah, and then I guess it would be between this natural base or even the third base, like for him to go and attack. Corruptors, it's kind of crazy how they went from being just these purely anti-air units, and then once you gave them a spell that can actually attack buildings, you open up so many options, which sometimes, they were not always thought of immediately, but nowadays I feel like the Zergs, they really understand when they can go for like a snipe on one of the buildings with them, the caustic spray. Yeah.
Just adds a little bit more of a lethalness to the Corruptors that they definitely didn't have beforehand. But this is, Stephano, we talked about it last game. He's not going to be thrown off by mech. He's not going to forget what it was like to deal with it. And the Roach Corruptor bust was an extremely popular tactic when this was the only build Terrans were doing. So I think Stephano is kind of thinking about that. He is getting supply blocked, however. He's going to remedy that with 7 Overlords. He's going to force these battlecruisers to teleport home just in the nick of time.
Oh, the Hellions
now
on the
they're
left.
Going to be weak.
Braddock saw the move out on the right-hand side by Stephano, and he's going to get on top of this base. I don't know why he's still not going for the drones immediately. He transforms into Hellbat. That's going to give a lot of time for the Roaches to walk back there, but those drones, they're kind of cornered. Stephano doing a good job so far, not letting the Hellbats fully connect, but he's completely stuck in that corner. But the Hellbats are fighting the Roaches.
Yeah, some of the Hellbats connected with the drones, so 6 of them go down, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, turning them into Hellbats is actually... I believe in both cases was not the right call. I think in the first engagement, it was more about like just going to a different location, hoping the queens were in position. And the second time around, it was actually just about blitzing. Just go for it. Go for the throw. Put all your Hellions to the natural, into the third base. They could have been split. They could have had Blue Flame kick in while they were still alive. And now, well, they're just all dead and they can't help out in the defense.
Caustic spray on the tech lab. Very, very nicely done here. Picked up on the fact something was being researched.
Battlecruisers do have to stay alive. They've been repaired up. There's some missile turrets to help out as well, and I think they might live through the onslaught of Corruptors, just because there's not that many Corruptors, but one's already down. SCV's pulled a little bit too late. So we're actually repairing tanks that are gonna die anyways. I think you just gotta hope that the Battlecruisers are able to repel this more so than you think the tanks will actually live through it. And I think that might be what's the case here. But of course, is that really going to be enough? SCVs will still be lost, structures will be lost, units will be lost, and Stephano is happily on 4 bases. Not in the best economy, sure, but on a better one than what Braddock's gonna have.
Yeah, he's about to lose a whole lot more SCVs here. Oh my god, because he's letting big time on all of those SCVs. He's killed 32 just now. And those battlecruisers, they're trying to clean up. Mass slings are gonna stream in as well. Braddock struggling to stay alive at this point.
I mean, it really is a bummer, though, because on 4 command centers, his 4th is finishing right now and turning into an orbital. And knowing how quickly this happens, if you hold as the Terran player, you have a strong chance to make a comeback, especially if your battlecruisers end up living, because re-affording Corruptors is actually really expensive for where Stephano's economy is at. So Braddock, it really sucks that he lost all those SCVs, especially to that Corrosive Vial, which was just beautiful. Because if he hadn't, then I think he's actually in a really good position. As it is, I think Stephano might have done just enough to propel this into the late game at kind of an even state. But that was really scary, and we actually still have a game in our hands. This is actually still playable.
Yeah, Braddock survived with 40 plus SCVs, so now he just launched a bunch of mules into that third base. And the plan, I guess, for him now is just to build up that tank out turtle, only move out with a very few Hellions at a time, which again gets surrounded. Stephano has been doing so good in controlling the map here, thanks to the crisp spread as well, giving him a lot of vision and extra speeds. That Corruptor count is looking really scary. Like Stephano, if he wanted to, could start heading across the map again and sniping whatever add-ons there is on those factories. But I think he's a little bit worried about an attack happening on the right-hand side at the same time, which, speaking of, Bratok is moving out.
Oh. Ooh, I don't know. This is actually an odd decision. Generally, mech players know how weak mech is prior to at least 150 supply. If not actually, you know, go ahead and wait till 180 or 200. This, I think, is going to be a mistake. Stephano has the ability to max out and then just overwhelm this with numbers. Since Braddock's not really doing a great job like covering himself, his tank count's kind of low. They are in a bit of a choke, and Stephano comes in here without any lings. His concave with the right side not really pairing up that quickly, and it's actually not that bad of a fight. Braddock is going to try and reinforce, though, and reinforcements with mech is always a bit questionable.
Yeah, lots of queens actually went down here just now. Looks like he's going to be able to clean up eventually. It didn't seem like the most cost-effective, but Bratok dropped a lot of supply here. The last few tanks are holding their own. He ends up being the one cleaning up all of this Roach and Ravager, so he's behind in supply. That didn't feel like it was the worst fight by Bratok. I like that he got out of there very quickly with the battle cruisers when the Corruptors were going to come in. And yeah, speaking of Corruptors, they found something to shoot on the other side of the map.
Lift and move, and should be okay. You still need to repair. Okay, well, the Corruptors aren't going to go after it anymore. They're going after the battle cruisers, as I guess they know that the teleport's off of or on cooldown rather. So both battle cruisers are dead, and that is, you know, even though the Corruptors were going to take them out eventually, that is still something that you don't want to give up too easily. Now they're gone, they can't help out. And Stephano is always going to max out better than the mech player. I mean, even on a poor economy, which he wasn't even at anymore, he got up 77 workers, 5 bases. The Roach is going to be a faster max out, and Bratok just gets simply overwhelmed. Too many units. GG. Bratok tries to put up a